Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Todd Bertsch. Todd Bertsch is a dynamic entrepreneur, motivational speaker, life optimization coach, and host of the Bolt podcast. His remarkable journey from overcoming challenges in his youth to a life-changing transformation in his 20s has shaped his career and established him as a respected figure in digital marketing, education, and leadership. In 2009, Todd founded Evolve Marketing, a successful digital agency that reflects his curious spirit and dedication to excellence. Driven by a passion to inspire, Todd's mission is to encourage individuals to embrace change, cultivate a growth mindset, and lead lives filled with purpose and fulfillment. His commitment to community service is evident through his involvement on numerous nonprofit boards, and he currently serves as the president of Leadership Akron, Signature Class 39. And with that, Todd, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It was a pleasure having you on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
And we had a very good pre-chat. We were introduced by a really good podcast agent, Noemi Barris.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is awesome. And she emailed me with your background and your story and what you're doing to try to, leave your mark in the world. And I looked at it, I said, yeah, this is going to be a good fit. One pre-chat later, here we are.
Looking forward to it.
Me too. My first question, Todd, is please tell our listeners about the experiences that have contributed to your life path and your life passions.
Yeah. Well, that's a loaded one, right? How long do we have?
We can always do a part two.
Yeah, right. No problem. No, I'll give the Cliff Notes. So, just like anybody, right? Everybody's got a journey. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's struggling with something, and everybody's been through some struggles. Obviously, some more intense than others. But, my journey started, and I won't go, too far into it, but basically I grew up in a blue collar environment. My parents are still alive and still around to this day, still together. And, they always worked two jobs. So it was very much, if you wanted something, you had to go get it. So that hard work ethic was ingrained in me from day one. And I had a paper route and I was shoveling drives and mowing lawns. So that work ethic, it was always there. Um, And it was a strong Catholic upbringing as well. So had a mix of both public and private schooling. Once I got into my early teenage years, I started hanging out with an older crowd. And this is the 70s, 80s, a little different time period. Not that it makes it right, but still a little different time period. And, I started experimenting with drugs and mainly pot, marijuana, and alcohol, like I'd say most kids. And it was fine and it was recreational, weekends. And this is, gosh, I have to say, it was probably 14 years old. So I have a 13-year-old daughter. And I, when I'm sharing my story, I'm like, damn, I can't imagine my daughter doing this. But again, so yeah, I started young and again, it was recreational, it was fine. Weekends, parties, high school parties and all that. Then once I got to high school, it started to escalate and it went from recreational to before school, during school, after school, all night, every day. Once I graduated high school, I didn't go to college right away. I was a janitor at a hospital. I had a decent job and that was my life. I had no nothing wrong with that and what I was doing in terms of the work. I paid my bills. I was contributing to society in that way, but I had no plans on really doing anything else. Certainly not going to college or being a leader in the community. And then once I got into my 20s, I think it was 2021, and it was definitely escalating. So I was starting to experiment with some other things, and it was definitely all day, all night. That's all. I was just living for the day, just living for the high. And then I was living with a couple of guys in a house, and it was a drug house pretty much, selling and doing. And I knew one of the guys. I didn't know the other guy. And long story short, one night I got into it with one of the guys, and I left. I went out with a few other friends and partied all night and came home, closed the bars, came home. They dropped me off. And I sat down in a chair, and my two roommates were there. And 5 minutes later, they came over and just started beating me to a pulp. They had some agenda. They were on something. I have no idea. Like I said, I had got into it with one of the guys prior, and they just had it out for me. And I mean, they literally beat me to a pulp. It was everything I could do to make it out of the house, honestly. And I did. And, it was at that moment, Dave, where I had this kind of profound premonition that I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. There's more here for me. And a week later, I enrolled in college. I was scared. I was nervous. I had been living in a fog for 6, 7 years, honestly. Like, I didn't really know what reality was like. I was pretty much high all the time. And so it was definitely a different period for me, but that was the transition. That's when I decided that I was going to do something more with my life. And, unfortunately, Dave, I preach a lot about cultivating and building this growth mindset. And the unfortunate piece is from what I'm learning and in conversations I'm having with people and even in research, it takes a traumatic event for people to take notes and really make a change. And that's what I'm hoping to change is the idea of cultivating this prior to or not even having some sort of event like this. Some people don't make it through that event, right? And mine, although it was definitely not fun, and there were lots of people who have been through much deeper traumatic events. But all that to say, that was the moment where I said, I'm going to do something. So I enrolled in college, and then really that started my transformational journey. And so when I went to school, I was ready. I was done with the life I had. I graduated magna cum laude, and I loved learning. And so I basically turned a very addictive personality, which I have, realizing that I have that trait from destroying my mind to basically rebuilding my mind. So addicted to learning and growth. And I've been on that ever since through different seasons in life. But that's pretty much the foundation of where the transformation started. And then fast forward a little bit, I go throughout my career, and I'm working for ad agencies and internet startup companies and getting lots of experience. And then COVID hits. And obviously that was for a lot of people very rough and a massive time for reflection. And indeed, that's what I did. And, you know, I got introduced to my life coach or my high performance coach. Well, she reached out to me on LinkedIn during that time, and we set up a Zoom call, and we just hit it off. And I hired her, and she took me through this program called Positive Intelligence. It's an amazing program by Shirzad Shamin. It's about building your mental muscle. And one of the other things I struggle with, Dave, aside from addiction and drugs, was having a voracious temper. It's a hothead. I didn't have a pause button. And this program, I mean, literally changed my life and allowed me to stop, reflect, instead of react, to then take it in and respond or not respond and just listen. And it's changed my life. It's changed the way that I lead. It's changed the way that I serve. And it's not only helped me, but everybody that's in my tribe, the people that I serve, it's helped them as well. During that time, I've been on that journey of transformation. I just got really addicted to personal growth in every aspect: health, mind, body, spirits. Last November, I had this kind of epiphany. I still felt like there was something I wasn't quite fulfilled. There was something missing in my life where I felt like I was just being called for something different. I've been in the business that I own now 15 years in digital marketing. And, it's successful. I have an amazing team, and in all regards, I'm successful, happy, but there was just something there that was kind of nagging at me. And I had this moment last year and I said, man, this is it. Like, I love being on a stage in front of people. I've always wanted to start a podcast. I love the experience of having a life coach, having a coach, and I've seen what that's done for me. I had one of my employees go through the program as well and how it's changed her life. And it just made sense. It was like this perfect ecosystem of having a podcast show about transformation and personal growth, similar, to your show, and sharing these journeys, but then also taking that on the road and motivational speaking, then offering some life optimization, as I call it, coaching. So, I just turned 54 a couple weeks ago, and I'm happy, Dave. Like, I found it. That's my message. I want people to find fulfillment, to find happiness, to find peace. Life is so much different. And, I have to give myself grace. That's one of my hardest things that I've been working on is, I'm like, at 54, I've lost so much time, but I did. I got there, so that's my saving grace is I just keep reminding myself I did get there, regardless of how long it took. I got there, and now I'm blessed that I can take this on the road and share it. And, if I can help one person, Dave, and I'm sure you have the same mantra, like if one person can listen to the show and I get feedback, I'll get a text or an email here and there, and they're like, I listen to this and I'm changing my morning routine. I started doing Pilates, or I started doing this or that. I started journaling. It's just the small shifts. We're not
Mhm.
going to change things overnight, but you got to do the work. You got to commit. You got to be ready. So anyhow, that's really all the full story, Dave.
Well, I'll tell you in terms of listening to your challenges with substance use, the beating that you took, it sounds to me like it served as a spiritual awakening for you to just say, I can't do this anymore. I need something better for myself. And a lot of individuals I've talked to that have been substance users have told me that it was one spiritual awakening or spiritual awakening that they had, particularly after a series of crises occurred over a short period of time that told them, I can't do this anymore. I need to look at a different alternative. But the fact is, you didn't just stop there. You realize that, hey, there's something else that's missing. And in the process of growth, I think we continue to seek other perspectives and we look deep down within and say, am I complete? Is there something missing? What do I need to do to continue to grow? And growth is going to occur for as long as we welcome growth. And I believe
Mm.
it'll occur to the end of our days. And that we can in the process learn from anybody and anybody who has a perspective to offer if we're open to that. I also like the proactive approach to dealing with, with shifting your perspective, because you're right. For me, it took a traumatic event in my life for me to begin to shift my
Mhm.
perspective and expand my belief system to accommodate the world that I was now living in. And I've always said, I wish it didn't take a traumatic event for
Mm.
that to happen. But the reality is that we can open ourselves up to different perspectives at any time. The time to do that may be before trauma hits. So you may be onto something in terms of let's take a proactive approach to perspective shifts to develop positive intelligence and let's not wait until the bottom drops out for that to happen.
Yeah, and that all starts, and you said it, Dave. You nailed it on the head. It all starts with the mindset. So one of my biggest things is educating people about what a mindset is, and that there's two different mindsets. You either have a fixed mindset or an open mindset. With a fixed, you're not going anywhere. You're complacent. You're a doormat. You're just on the treadmill, you're the rat rate, you're just doing the same thing, Groundhog Day, day after day, and you're fine. That will not serve you anywhere. That will not, you will not go anywhere. So if you can be open to having an open mindset, which in my mind, Dave, is really all about curiosity. That is the key to life, in my opinion. That one word. I've been trying to boil it down to one word and potentially where I'm going to take a book here in the next few years. It all comes down to curiosity. If we're curious, truly curious, that means we're open, right? And we're looking for opportunities and we're not being judgmental. So we're just coming into whatever situation, conversation, scenario with an open mind. Bruce Lee says, the best part of a cup is its emptiness. And I just absolutely love that, right? You can pour whatever you want in, but you got to be open. You got to have it empty and just ready. So if we can cultivate a growth mindset, Dave, and just be open to new things and to change. We all are struggling with something. We all can be better than who we are today, but it all just starts with being open and starting with one thing. What's one thing you could change today? Maybe it's smiling more or saying thank you more, having more gratitude, starting a gratitude practice, walking for 5 minutes every morning, telling your spouse or partner thank you for taking out the trash or that you love them, kissing your kids on the forehead before you go to bed. I mean, these are simple things, but they go a long way. And it's a habit, right? You just have to, I tell people, it's in Atomic Habits. James Clear says it. It's 21 to 30 days, like a month. If you can spend a month, just 30 days to build a new habit, that's not that long. People do dry January, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a whole interesting concept. So yeah, that's what it's all about, Dave. If you can have that open mindset and start to just cultivate this before something happens. Really what I'm trying to do, I mean, I want to reach everybody, but I think if we can educate the younger audience, the younger people, they're not like us. We're more resistant to change the older we get. But I am reaching a younger audience and I am just pleasantly surprised by some of the outreach, some people in their 20s that have been open to listening to the show. They're like, "Oh man, I'm going to make some change or I'm going to go check out that book or maybe Positive Intelligence or learn more about habits." And that's what I want to do. I have a 25-year-old son too and he's into it. He loves it. He's now doing a gratitude practice in the morning and he's journaling and he's seeing the benefits of that. I think COVID was amazing for a lot of ways. I know it was horrible for so many people. I have some close friends that lost loved ones or it really affected them, and they will always have a result of that epidemic. But there was some really amazing things that came out of it. It helped change my life personally, but it brought all these things to the forefront, mental health and the workplace, right? It will never be the same. So this idea of leading with empathy has really been brought to the forefront. And so I think we're making progress. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we are making progress where this is more of a conversation piece. And maybe it's part of curriculum. Maybe it's part of a leadership agenda, itinerary, right? We're talking about these things and how we lead. And then it's a trickle down, right? If leadership is doing this and showing people how important it is to build your skill set professionally and grow that way. But if you're not investing in yourself, growing yourself, being familiar with your emotions, building your EQ and your PQ and all these other things and Dave, I want to say this, like, I think you agree, and you said it to some degree. If you are not learning, you're not growing, and honestly, you're not living. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. You're not. That's what we were meant to do. We were meant to evolve.
Yep. And I think if you take a look at our brain capability, we may use our conscious brain. I've read 4 to 5% of the time. And in order for more of that to be awakened, we have to give individuals, and particularly young adults, some hunger to try different things beyond traditional school curriculums. And I try to, with the courses that I teach, I have to give them information that I believe they're going to need content-wise to be
Mhm.
able to work effectively with people. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond other specific skills that they may need, other specific tools or holistic practices that they can utilize with clients who are going to respond better to that than they would traditional approaches. So
Right.
it's giving them an opportunity to think, to plant seeds. And I tell my students, don't confuse the passion that I have for what I'm teaching is saying that this is how you have to believe. My job as a teacher is to plant seeds, to
Mm.
open some doors, and you decide which door you want to walk through, and you determine your truth within that door that you walk through. And if your truth is that I can't walk through this door, I don't align with that, then you've taken a stand. But at least you have the openness enough to look at that door and say, how does this align? How does what's behind that door align with my belief system? Can I integrate that into my core belief system without abandoning my core beliefs? Or do I just want to walk away from it and entertain something else? And I think as
Mhm.
coaches and as clinicians, we need to empower individuals to make the choices that are best for them, even if that may not align with our personal value system.
Yeah, you said it. It's coming into that conversation with a coaching mindset, right?
Mhm.
Even as a teacher, if you have a coaching mindset, as a leader, as a parent, if you have a coaching mindset, that's a little bit different than telling somebody what to do and how to do it.
Mhm.
And it also goes back to those individuals being open and curious, right? So, as you said, with those three doors, are you at least open to exploring and seeing what's behind that door? It may not align with your core values or what you want to do in life, but at least you're going to take a look at it. You're going to learn about that. You're going to learn what you don't like, but at least you explored it. And
Yeah.
then you can move on to really cultivate, what's your lane? What are you most passionate about?
Yeah.
Where do you want to make your mark, plant your feet and take your message, to the world. So, yeah.
You talked a little bit about positive intelligence and
Mhm.
how that transformed your mindset. What aspects of positive intelligence do you use in working with your clients to help them find success or redefine success and achieve fulfillment?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's about shifting from a negative to a positive. I mean, there's tools and techniques, and you're basically rewiring your brain. You're doing mental exercises, just as if you would go to the gym and do curls or bench press. You're doing reps. By doing those reps, you're rewiring, retraining your brain, sending signals saying, okay, when I come into this situation, I can recognize that it's a trigger for me. Shirzad calls them saboteurs or judges. Say, oh, that's my judge. He's saying that I'm not good enough, so I shouldn't try this because I might fail. The other piece is the sage piece that Shirzad says and he talks about, and that's about shifting and looking for the gift and the opportunity in every situation. And again, it goes back to being open and curious. So if you're open and curious and there's a gift. I just lost a really good friend last week to cancer, and she was an amazing person. And, I'm thinking about Shirzad and my friend, it was his wife. And, what do you say? Talk to him. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say, man. Like, I love you. I'm here for you. Was there a gift there? I mean, those, that's hard, right? To tell somebody there is a gift and opportunity in everything. But it's just being open and curious, right? And what do you do with that? So it changes your mindset to be more positive. When you're most positive, that affects everything in your life. It affects your health, your clarity, your capacity to handle challenges, right? As a leader, as a entrepreneur, as a teacher, as a parent, as opposed to reacting, you can just pause, take it all in, be open and just come into it with a different perspective, with a different lens. And you're going to get much better results from that approach.
Let's determine how we want to handle a situation prior to going into it. Let's be more proactive as opposed to reactive. but
Yes.
also understand that we can learn from everything, both good and bad, that the universe presents to us.
Yeah, there's always gonna be bad, and that's
Mhm.
not necessarily a bad thing. That helps us understand what we don't like and what our triggers are, but you need to be open and be in tune with your emotions
Mhm.
and just what triggers you. It's fine, it's okay. Like the simplest thing, Dave, like, driving is was always one of my triggers. I hated when people didn't use a blinker. I would beep at them and cuss at them, or if somebody cuts me off, I would go ballistic. And I'm thinking back now, just how embarrassing, how ridiculous it was. And my wife hated it. We would always get in an argument. She's like, "Why are you doing
Mhm.
that? Like, it doesn't really help." But the shift here is, I can feel the trigger like I'm behind somebody. It's a one lane road and they're going slower than molasses. I'm like, oh, here we go. So one of the tactics is I just rub my fingers. I've been doing that for 4 years. It sends a signal to my brain like, hey, Todd, this is your saboteur. This is your judge. Chill, brother. It's okay. It doesn't, you're both going to get there at the same time, regardless if you pass them or not. So move on. One of the things that I've learned that I didn't anticipate which was kind of a surprise, was the recovery time. So when I do have a challenge or a situation that I'm struggling with, my recovery is minutes as opposed to days or hours, where that would just throw off my whole attitude, right? For something really ridiculous. So those are just some samples, some scenarios that I've experienced and how that tool and going through that program has helped me shift.
Well, and it also sounds like the positive intelligence paradigm that you expose your clients to also helps them determine, where am I going to focus my energy? Do I want to focus any negative response that I have, or sadness, or on something really small that I have no control over, or something that's really meaningful?
Hmm.
Where, like in the case of your friend's wife, and by the way, my condolences for your loss.
Thank you.
Um, and I also will say that sometimes positive intelligence recognizes that there are no words in a situation that can make a situation either better or peaceful for that individual. And sometimes it's just the power of your presence saying, I'm thinking of you. I'm here for in any capacity that you need me to listen, and trust that I will check in with you. And I tell people, don't make that promise unless you are going to do that, but
Right.
trust that I am
Right.
going to check in with you and just tell you I'm thinking about you. And what that does is empowers that individual to say, okay, here's where I'm at today. Here's what I might need. Here's what I need to talk about. So no words are better than words that are going to undermine the experience of somebody going through trauma.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think in most situations, people just want someone to listen.
Hmm.
Honestly, whether that's a life coaching situation or a friend, and really any relationship, manager, business owner, entrepreneur, teacher, counselor, clinician, most people just want and need someone to listen to them. That's it, just to be there to show up. And I like that you said what you said. It's important if you are going to tell somebody that you're going to show up and be there, you need to do that. And if it takes adding a reminder on your phone or an Outlook or Gmail to do that, then do it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're a busy person, it's like me. I have my calendar, all these things are blocked off. I either have a sticky note or it's in my cow. And if it's in my cow, it's going to happen because I committed, to that person or that event or that organization.
Yeah, when you write something down or when you put a reminder in your phone, you are committing to following through with what you intended to follow through with. So, yeah, I mean, technology can be a real boost
Hmm.
because we can put reminders on our phones. We can create notes for ourselves. We can put a reminder in our calendar. It just prompts us to say, okay, today I'm going to call Joe, or today I'm
Hmm.
going to check in with Joe. So we have technology at our disposal. We also have the old school methods, and sometimes a combination of both is good, but use the tools that you have available.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a menu of options. So,
There are. I still like a good old sticky note, Dave.
hey,
Best in, best
I
invention.
think I have sticky notes. I have a, paper calendar. So I use my paper calendar, my
Hmm.
digital calendar. I think there's a place for all of it. So
Yep.
one of the things, and I know clients will come to you and say, I want to be successful. How do I do this? And I also understand that you do some values exploration to see
Mm.
how their definition of success doesn't align with their current values or what they want for themselves. So take us through that process. If I were to come with you, and how would you do you make sure or ensure that the values that I want to embrace to determine my redefined definition of success are going to align with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it starts with really a life audit. And interesting enough, and I don't, know when this episode is going to release, but we're recording it in December towards the end of the year, which is always at least a time for me when I'm thinking about spending the last week of the year reflecting. I track a lot of things in my life for one reason, to make sure that I am in alignment. And it's not just goals, like professional goals. I'm talking about what's important to me. And that's what it starts with. So I think it's important before you can take the steps of creating a plan, you need to reflect. And a lot of people, I don't think they need to go through the exercise of doing an audit to understand what is important to them. So we go through all the pillars in life. How are you doing financially? How are your relationships with your spouse, your partner, your kids, your team, your parents, siblings, whatever those relationships are? How are you doing health wise? How is your fitness? Do you have any plans? Are you doing any routines? Mentally, how are you doing? Do you have any gratitude practices? Are you doing any form of meditation, breathing, exercises? And, is faith a piece of your life, and exploring and talking about that? So it's really this holistic approach to mind, body, and soul, right? We can work on little aspects here and there, but it really does take that full picture to make somebody the best they can possibly be. So I like going through an audit, really asking somebody to fill out a survey. It's a rating, rate your happiness level from 1 to 10, rate your relationship with your partner 1 to 10. It's a great exercise to do with your partner and spouse. Have them go through it and see how they rate themselves and how they think you would actually rate yourself, and compare and contrast. It's kind of a game that my wife and I have started doing, much to her resistance, but she has allowed me to go through it together. But so, yeah, that's to me, Dave, that's where it starts, just asking those questions, and again, being open and being honest with yourself to see where are you at. And from there, you'll start to learn about kind of your strengths and weaknesses and what's important to you. Maybe faith isn't a big deal to you. It's not something that you grew up with. It's not really part of, your system right now. For me, I grew up Catholic, and I had a strong relationship there, with the Catholic Church, and I fell out of touch, but it's been on my list, going through that audit every year for the past 3 years. It's the one thing that's getting a low score. So I know, because that's important to me, right, that I want that to be bigger in my life. And I've made huge strides this year, but I have a good feeling, because I track it when I do the audit, that I'm going to have to make some more moves on that next year. But I'm making progress. And you can't beat up on yourself. I think if you recognize it, you take action, and you're starting to shift, and it takes time, that you'll get there, And so going through that exercise, we have the discussion, and it really comes out like, what is important to you? For me, and it's going to depend on your season in life. If I'm talking with somebody who's 25 years old, just got married, right? They're starting to build their family, buying their first house, having their first child. What's important to them? It might be that they just need to make money. They need to make some money to do the things that they want to do, to start to build, this support system for their family. And it's like, there was nothing else really important at that time than to bring that money in for that reason. I'm different. Like I said, I'm 54, and I'm at the end of my career, because I don't believe that I'm going to retire. And I'm actually just getting started
Mm.
with this, what I'm calling my second act. But for me, it's the relationships and the growth. That's important to me, and it's all those things. It's making sure that I'm in the gym and I'm getting that physical exercise because that makes me feel good. I let off some tension. It gives me more energy. It allows me to do all the things that I want to do. And then the gratitude practice, very important to me. And like I said, starting to get stronger in my faith. And then also my relationships, making sure that I'm getting good quality time with my wife, with my kids, because to my point earlier, you just never know. You never know when something, I know it's so cliche and people say it all the time. You see it on social media. It's true. You just don't know. But until we experience a tragedy or have a loss, by somebody that we know, then we're like, oh, okay, maybe I should take a look at this. I'm moving too fast. I'm too busy. I have all these things going on. And, I asked the question, are you busy? Is it a good busy? Are these things aligned? And that's really where I come in and say, okay, if this is what's important to you, then that balance, right? That work-life balance or integration needs to be more skewed, more 50-50, right? Career is important, but maybe it's not the most important thing right now. It's getting that quality time with your kids before they don't want to spend any time with you. So that's kind of where I'm at, is making sure that I'm getting that time. And my parents are older and I don't know how much longer they'll be around. So, being cognizant of that and tracking the time with them, as silly as it may sound, I have a goal. I want to get, at least a couple of experiences with them a month. And how can I do that? Or at least a call on the phone once a week to check in. But time goes by so fast. We get busy in our schedules and kids and family and these events. And next thing you know, a month's gone by. You're like, oh man, I haven't seen that person, and then who knows? They get sick and you're living with regret. So that was a long way to answer your question, Dave. But, it's going through the process, reflecting, really understanding who you are, where you're at in life, and what's important to you. Because the last thing you want is to live with regret.
Yeah, and essentially what it sounds like you do is help individuals determine what their goals are, what their definition of success is, and so that they can come up with a plan that's going to align with what they want to have happen, for in the immediate future and beyond. And it's just a process of getting all that to align with collaboration with the client. The thing I like about the audit that you take right from the get-go, it establishes yourself as a listener. Here, I want to see what your needs are. I
Mhm.
want to see what you're struggling with. And then you could sit down with your client and just say, okay, this is what I'm interpreting from your answers. This is what I'm hearing you want to do. Is that correct? Is there more that I'm missing, or is there something you want to add? So it establishes you as a listener. It establishes you as, I want to collaborate with you because I don't have all the answers and you know yourself better than I do. And that's kind of a takeoff on Carl Rogers' client-centered approach to therapy. But the client knows themselves better than we know them. And we need to be able to tap into their inherent wisdom and their strengths so that we can help them achieve their goals and achieve, like I said, a work-life integration, work-life balance, however they choose to interpret that. And it sounds like you define success not just in terms of monetary abundance, but it's the richness in all of those areas of our lives that are meaningful to us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's my season in life, right? A different person, different time in their life might have a different purpose. And that's what this is all about. There's not one set for anybody. Everybody's unique and different. And it goes back to my favorite quote of all time. The purpose of life is a life of purpose by Robert Byrne. That purpose is going to be different, but find something that's meaningful. The system that I go through, Dave, is called the GROW model. And it's really about what's your goal? Where do you want to be? Where are you now? How do we get there? And what will you do? It's a coaching mindset. We're not telling you what to do. You need to come up with that, right? Because you're the only one that can take action. You're the only one that can commit to this. I can't force you to do this. Even if you agree that you want to hire a coach, a life coach or a high performance coach or business coach, or go to a class or hire a therapist, that's step one. Step two is still being open and that person listening, like you said, and providing the right questions for you to think and come up with the answer on your own. That's the key to being a good coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, the individuals that I know that I worked with who came from unhealthy family situations, they had ambivalent relationships with authority figures anyway. Especially with their parents or legal guardians not proving to be consistent authority figures, they begin to question that and not trust it. And so consequently, they're going to come into a situation, and if you try to tell them what to do, they're going to be resistant.
Just shut
Rather,
down.
tell me what you need from me. Tell me how I can be of service to you. What can I do to be of help? This way, it puts them in the driver's seat
Right.
and it empowers them to determine what their reality is through their own eyes and not through the eyes of somebody else.
Right. Yeah. And that's listening, right? And
Mhm.
building that trust,
Mm.
you know, and that takes time. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, like anything, growth is an ongoing process, and
Hmm.
developing trust is an ongoing process. And you're
Right.
right, it doesn't happen overnight. Tell our listeners about the Bolt podcast and how that aligns, the mission of your podcast aligns with the work that you do with individuals who request services from you.
Yeah, I love it. It's been the joy of my life, honestly, and I'm sure you'll say the same. And we've talked a little bit about how hard it is. A lot of people don't realize there's a ton of work that goes into
Mhm.
this, and especially to commit to a weekly cadence is crazy. I mean, really, it's a ton of work, but I love it, Dave. It aligns perfectly. The Bolt podcast is all about sharing transformational journeys of trials and tribulations and what people have gone through to get where they're at today and the impact that they're having on individuals, whether that's within their family, the community. I've talked with a lot of leaders within businesses, big business, small business, people that have started nonprofit organizations to uplift others. And everybody's got a story, and I love that piece. See, I just love people in general, and I love hearing their stories and their journeys because I'm open, I'm curious about people's lives. And the one thing is, I'm learning so much, and I'm sure you'll attest to this, like almost too much to a point where it is a little bit of overload. I got a stack of books 30 deep that I can't get to because, I'm prepping for shows. I'm learning about, the guests because I want it to be a good quality show for my listeners. So, but that's what it's about, Dave. In the end, I'm hoping that a listener will take away a nugget that it'll resonate. They can say, "Oh, I can see myself, in that person. It resonates with me, and maybe I should take a look, or maybe I'll be more open to cultivating a growth mindset. Maybe I'll think about being more open to trying new things and not being afraid of risk or failure." So that is the premise, and that's the goal of the show is, and I have to go back to the mission, Dave, every now and then, because I'll be honest, I do get caught up in imposter syndrome here and there, right? You see somebody like, oh, I've only got this many downloads, or I haven't got this many reviews or ratings. And I go back to the mission statements. The goal of the show is to help one person. If I can help one person be the best version of themselves, to cultivate a growth mindset and not have this traumatic event happen. And they're like, oh crap, now I need to make some changes. Then I've done my job. But it fills my tank, man. So this is what gets me up in the morning, having these conversations, being a guest on shows, but also having guests on my show. You can see the studio behind me, which I love. So I'm doing half my guests are in the studio and then the other half are Zoom, which is great because then it expands to the world. I had a conversation with a wonderful lady in Switzerland a month ago about a new book on emotional intelligence that she just launched. And that's amazing, right? To be able to reach out to somebody and say, "Yeah, I'd love to be on there." So it's just building a community and amplifying the message. That's what the goal was for this show. So if anybody's open to it, if they like your show, I think they would like mine as well. At least give it a shot or poke through the guests and see if there's something that resonates with you and just give it a listen. I'd appreciate it.
And I'll make sure too in the episode notes that a link to follow your podcast and listen to episodes are included.
Yes.
I think our missions and our intent with our podcast both align quite nicely. And I've had a variety of different guests who have been willing to share, like yourself, who have been willing to share their stories, share their journeys with the selfless intent of just simply helping others who are going to be listening.
Mhm.
So if you're going to leave our listeners with one thing today, and one thing with subcategories, I'm also good with that. What would that be? And I know there's been a lot of takeaways already, but what would be the penultimate takeaway you want to leave our listeners with today?
Be an empty cup. Be open, be curious. Your world will look so much different if you approach every situation, every scenario, every conversation with just an open mind.
And I'm going to add one thing to that, if I may, Todd.
Absolutely.
Something that Maury Schwartz said: "Be a mensch," which is be human.
Mm,
And I really love that saying. And for those listeners who may not be familiar with Maury Schwartz, he was the subject of Mitch Albom's best-selling memoir, Tuesdays with Maury.
mm,
And Maury Schwartz taught us he was, through his own dying process, how we could live life more fully. And he was one of the first people, I think, to do that. So, but be a mensch, be human.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely.
if my listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just check out my website, toddbertsch.com. That's BERTSCH.com. Or definitely hit me up on any of the social platforms. I'm there. You can find me at The Bolt with Todd B. And put out a lot of great motivational, inspirational content. I have a newsletter as well that you can sign up for on my website. Follow me, shoot me an email. I'd love to meet new people and just start new conversations.
Yeah, and I can attest that based on the conversations that we've had, it'd be well worth your time to check out what Todd has to offer and allow him to be a co-companion on the path that you want to create for yourself. So, Todd, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share space with me on the Teaching Journeys podcast. I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope we can have future conversations.
Absolutely, Dave. I feel blessed that we got to meet each other and kindred spirits. So I always like having new people in my tribe that share the same core values. So I appreciate you and what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation.
Me too. And with that, that is a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.